Okay, welcome back. So in the last video we left off here with this basic composite, nothing crazy. In this video I want to do a little bit with emissive materials. Emissive materials are super fun to work with, so I thought it'd be like the perfect break. So what I was thinking is maybe on the front here, if I click on the scope and press period key on the number pad to zoom in, I'm thinking either we could make this glass and be the most cliche designer ever, or we could make this even cooler and make it sci-fi looking, give it an emissive material with a nice glow around it. So maybe we can do like a glow up here and on the front. And interesting. Am I missing? I'm missing this piece. It's not showing up in the render. Okay. Well, you know what? This brings up a good point. Sometimes you'll have this issue where things are invisible in the scene, and this actually occurs because whenever you do the stealing geometry trick, sometimes if that was from a cutter, then if you take from a cutter, it turns off the camera visibility. How am I trying to explain this? So when you use the bool tool and you run a difference boolean with a cutter, the cutters by default turn off the rendering view. So basically, if you ever have issues like this, you just go to this panel here, and under visibility, you need to make sure all these guys are turned on. I just literally click all of them, turn all of them on, and same for this one, just turn all of them on. A lot of people ran into this issue in the last course, so I'm actually glad this happened now rather than later. So that's all you have to do to fix that problem. It's a very common one, so don't stress out if that happens to you. I think that's the only area that had that issue though. Okay, I got a little bit off track there, but I'm actually glad that occurred because I know people would run into that problem, so might as well sort it out now. Okay, so back to this piece. What I'm going to do is select this, and obviously we still have material on here. If we want to keep this material and not have to remove it, we can simply add a new one. And I'm going to call this new, or click on new. We're going to change the surface to an emission material. And all we have to do is tab into edit mode, select it with the A key, and then click assign. So now it's emitting light. Now it's not very strong, and also I would recommend doing this in look dev mode, the material view instead, because in cycles the bloom effect won't be enabled. We'll enable the bloom effect later when we render, but for now we need to preview this in material mode. So by default, bloom should be turned on in the rendering panel here. Let's see, well, I guess that's for Eevee only, but by default look dev actually has bloom enabled. So if you really increase the emission count, you can see we have this nice bloom effect going on. Now I'm going to put it to about 10, and we'll just rename this material to emission so we know what it is, and then maybe change the color to something we like a green or a blue. You can change it to whatever you want. So now we have this nice bloom effect, and you can of course increase the strength as high as you want. But I would be very careful with this because the higher the strength is, the more the composition is going to, at least from this angle, the more the composition is going to pull up to the scope and be unbalanced. So I'd recommend keeping the strength just low enough to show the bloom, but also high enough to show that there's an emission coming from the scope. And you know, some people might ask me, well, how do you look through this thing if it's emissive? And I tell them, it's a sci-fi weapon. It's not meant to be super realistic. It's meant to look cool. For all you know, this could be like a robot's weapon, right? A robot looks through this and can see through it just fine, whereas a human can't. You know, when you do these sci-fi designs, you have to be creative and use your imagination sometimes. Nothing has to be so literal and strict. That just makes the world boring, in my opinion. And I just think it looks cool, so I'm going to definitely leave this here. Another thing you could do if you're not really a fan of the emission is you could change this to a glass shader instead and get a little bit of glass going. Now we're going to actually be doing that, but we're going to do that in the front instead, so bear with me for now. So this looks quite nice. One other thing I might do is bring some sort of emission material over here somewhere, just something shiny and reflective to make it look cool. Let's go back into the camera view and see where we could add this perhaps. We could do it on the left or maybe in the middle to balance it, or on the right. It's really all up to us. What we could do is try to fit a little bit of an emissive material in this notch here. So I guess the easiest way to do that would be to, I don't know, maybe add in a plane. We'll add in a plane, we'll rotate it 90 degrees, and just let's rotate it 45 or 30 maybe. I don't know what the rotation was. Either way, let's just put this inside the notch here. We'll just scale it down on the local Y and just bring it out a bit, so right about here maybe. Then we'll just add a new emissive material, give this maybe some sort of golden color, but everything would look nice, and just increase the strength to like 10, or that might be too high, maybe like 5 or so. So now we have a little bit of a glow going on in the side, which I think looks pretty decent. Maybe make this more of a darker orange down here somewhere. And if we go into rendering view, we're going to see the color. We're not going to have any emission going on though. Don't worry about the emission too much because it'll show up once we set up the compositor. For now, I'm going to end the video here, and then in the next video we're going to add some glass materials, and then maybe we'll give this a preview render and see how it looks. We're going to add in more detail, of course, but it's always good to get a preview render going to see how the composition is.